is flippin' fabulous. Just stumped all over that, didn't I? Wow, wow, wow. Hi, this is Charlie, and this is my January wrap-up, and the first time I've ever talked about books that I've read on YouTube. Yes, so this month I read 7 books in total, which I'm quite proud of, even if other booktubers read way more than I, but I am not possessed by demons. The reason I read this many books is purely because of audiobooks. I started reading them more this month. I tried out Scribd. I'm not advertising it, I just tried out Scribd and it worked for me. I've been using it whilst running, been using it whilst sewing, and yeah, just generally while going about my business. So 5 of the books are audiobooks and then 2 are physical books that I'm very excited about. So let's get into it. So the first book I read this year was Polysecure by Jessica Fern, which is a book about attachment theory and how to apply it to a non-monogamous life. Because a lot of attachment theory, if you're not familiar with it, it comes from like the 50s, I'm gonna say 1950s, and it analysed little children and the way they attached to their mothers specifically, and kind of defined that most people fall into like one of 3 attachment styles, one of them being secure, 2 of them being insecure. There is a 4th now, which is disorganised, which can be a mix of multiple of the insecure. That's a very, very short summation of attachment theory, but most of this leans into monogamy being the be-all and end-all of the secure relationship in adulthood. And obviously, lots of people don't live their lives in a fully monogamous way anymore. Even people who are monogamous are serial monogamists, they have casual sex, etc, etc. All of these things which back in the day in attachment theory would have been deemed as something an insecure person would do. So this book kind of brings it up to date and helps sort of mesh attachment theory with modern life. So Jessica Fern, she is a psychotherapist herself. She works with polyamorous people and is polyamorous herself, so she's got the credentials there. And she's just really, really good at explaining attachment theory. A good chunk of the book is just going through everything in attachment theory, and it just feels so comprehensive. She presents opinions that are different from her own in just a really fair and balanced way and breaks down her reasons why she doesn't work the way they do. And it's just done so well. Though obviously comes with a warning. The tagline to the book is attachment, trauma, and consensual non-monogamy. So be aware that it is talking about traumas, it is talking about difficult childhoods, abusive adult relationships, and trauma based around poly and adult life as well. Be aware if you're going into this book that you may have some work to do afterwards. I think the audiobook is probably better, because I imagine if you're sitting there reading through the first chunk that just feels really psychology heavy, you might put it down before you get to the stuff that is really helpful. I mean, the whole thing is helpful because I managed to see parts of my life and my past, good and bad, throughout this book. And it just covers so many different kinds of lifestyles. She makes sure she mentions people who are asexual, relationship anarchists. She really tries to cover all of these different kinds of people who live outside of like the norm of monogamous relationships. And the end of this book includes how you can help build secure attachments with another like willing person or with yourself. I really want to get all my partners to read it, and everyone I know that practices polyamory, I guess. I'm gonna go as far as saying that it's the best book, guide, etc. that I've read on polyamory thus far. I really, really recommend it to anyone. I just really want to sing the praises of this book because wow, it's just so kind of life-changing for me. So my second book of January is Sitting Pretty by Rebekah Taussig, which was recommended by Jen Campbell in one of her videos, and I just went ahead and gave it a read, and it is so good. So it's about Rebekah Taussig. It is a book about ableism and also just about her life from being a young kid without a wheelchair, happily dragging herself around and doing whatever the heck she wants in her humongous family, and then to modern day, where she has clearly been through a lot to get to the point where she is, and she's not perfect. There's no like super duper happy ending. It's just life, and I would recommend it to anyone and everyone. The best bits about it for me were when she's talking about ableism and it's sort of the way it permeates through capitalism as a very, very broad example. To get ahead in a lot of jobs, really, you have to stay behind. You have to do the work outside of work. You can't just clock out and go home and that's it, that's over. The people that really get ahead, and sometimes you'll even see in job descriptions, they want people who's going to stay behind, work and work in their outside time, etc. This has ableism at its core, because if your body gets fatigued a lot easier because it's working on something else, like in the background all the time, you aren't going to be able to do that. And you might actually need to take less time than other people. People who don't have disabilities, even they might push themselves and push themselves and push themselves, but it's going to get to the point where they just break and aren't going to be able to keep working constantly over 40 hours a week all of the time. And I think she just really hammers it home that ableism is a problem for everyone. I just really enjoyed her writing. I just want a lot more people to read this so I can talk about it even more, because wow. Yes. So far this month, I've been quite excited about the books I'm reading, but the next one is going to be my first negative review. It's The Blue Girl by Laurie Foos. I remember seeing Jen Campbell talk about this, and I remember her saying it was weird, and that's all I remembered when I was scrolling through Scribd, and I was like, alright, I'm a bit bored, I've got some sewing to do, I'll give it a listen. So it's about, very roughly, 3 mothers who go to feed this blue girl their secrets in the form of mooncakes. It took me a while to look this up. It's not mooncakes as in like the like Asian sweet treat thing. It's mooncakes as in like they're basically like wagon wheels. But yeah, they bake their secrets into wagon wheels and feed them to a blue girl. Yeah, that's as much as I could give you. I really wanted to give myself over to the story, but this really faltered on the ableism part of it. All of the voices in the story, there's multiple voices, they're all from the women. So there are a couple of men who are silent. One who is a dad that has seemed to have had like a psychological break. He can only, all he does is play with a Nerf ball. Yeah, so he just does that all day. And another one is an autistic son. And at first, I thought it was giving a certain, rather honest representation of someone who is autistic. He is not, no, he's not nonverbal, but they say that he speaks like a cartoon character most of the time. He has meltdowns, and it wasn't until we got to his mother talking about him that I felt the first real stings of discomfort. So I thought the way she talked about him was going to just be a representation of how some parents think about their autistic child, like a burden, or trying to see like the true them shining through. This sort of inner, like, neurotypical person is shining out, and it just makes me very uncomfortable. Because there's nothing wrong with being neurodivergent. I thought maybe we get to see the world through his eyes later on in the story, but we don't. He's just used as a way to advance the plot towards the end. And yeah, not great, really. It didn't give me a satisfying ending either. So I felt like it had some promise at the start of just being like sort of a crazy magical realism story. There was going to be some real like revelation at the end where this blue girl comes from, etc, etc. Nope. She's not a clear metaphor. I actually kind of thought when reading this, I think it's called the sexy lampshade theory. For women in films, if a woman can be replaced by a sexy lampshade, then she is not a fully rounded character because she's just being used as like a place marker for people to throw their ideas upon. And I kind of feel like there should be the equivalent of that for people with disabilities like autism, where they are just used as like this place marker, this metaphor, whatever, you know. They don't really know what they're doing in the story. They don't have an active part in the story. They just represent something. And I feel it's overdone, and yeah, didn't like it. I'm gonna drink some tea. Laurie Foos, man, what are you doing? So the next book I read is very short. Well, it's an essay. It took just over an hour to listen to by audio, and it is Whites on Race and Other Falsehoods by Otegha Uwagba. And wow, yes, like this was a punch in the gut, and is what I expected, really. I'd heard Let's Talk About Books Baby talking about it, and yeah, it just took the kind of social media activism that has been happening over the last year and kind of said, this isn't enough. In fact, this is just the one step beyond being white supremacist. This is just the first tiniest little step. All these kind of things, like on social media, the flipping black box, advertising black businesses on your Instagram, it's barely anything. It's the very start of what we are meant to do. We have not lost any privilege in the process. We have not made any huge changes really at all, and it sounds really doom and gloom, but I think it's just exactly what people need to hear right now, is that there is more to be done, and it's not going to change. Like, racism is not going to change without white people acting upon it, with people like me acting upon it actively and risking their privilege. It was sobering, it was a punch in the gut. I'm not going to say it's an essential read because that's also mentioned in that essay, the whole black reading list. It really hit home for me when talking about that as well, because I think a lot of like black writers writing, even if it has nothing to say on the subject of race specifically at all, is now being heralded as social activism. And it's not social activism just to read a black voice. I feel the same, obviously different thing, but I feel the same about trans writers. Like, not every trans writer has to write about being trans as a political statement. You know, when we politicize people creating art or just living their damn lives, we belittle them, we kind of objectify them. We're making them into ideas rather than creative people who can express themselves however they want. Yeah. Okay, now we're on to the physical book. I read Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency by Douglas Adams. And obviously it was fantastic because Douglas Adams is fantastic. Obviously this is Douglas Adams taking the detective mystery story, making it as weird as possible and playing with some of the tropes as well. And yeah, it was really satisfying. It was really good. It was good fun. There were some really laugh out loud bits, and I think Douglas Adams has such a talent of getting into these really strange, otherworldly situations and being able to really think, what would this feel like? What would this look like? What would this sound like? You know, really put himself into someone else's shoes, even if those shoes are like of something completely supernatural. So yeah, good fun. Would recommend. Give yourself a good amount of time to get into it. Just give yourself an evening to get started on it and get really into it, because I regret not giving a good chunk of time to get started with it. I think I just read like the first chapter, put it down, was really confused, picked it up, read the next chapter, was really confused, and kept going on like that for quite some time, because this book takes ages for everything to fall into place. And it does in the end, maybe a halfway through or even 2/3 of the way through, until I was like, oh, okay, now we're in the story. Now everything's happening and everything's coming together. I'm looking forward to reading the next one. This would stand alone though, completely fine. So if you just want to read one, have a taster, if you know what Douglas Adams is like, then you'll know if you enjoy it or not. Really funny, really just bonkers. This next book is what I was listening to when I started running this month. So if you know me, that's absolutely crazy. I have pretty bad asthma that flares up specifically when I do exercise and for other things, but definitely when I do exercise. So I started running and doing couch to 5k very slowly. I might do a video about it probably when I'm finished, when I'm actually a runner. But I've been listening to, it's so cliched, what I talk about when I talk about running by Haruki Murakami, and it was lovely. It was so good to listen to while running actually, because Haruki Murakami is doing like marathons, triathlons, ultra marathons, and here's me running like a minute or 90 seconds at a time, just being like, whew, I feel you. Oh my god. Yeah, it was quite fun to listen to someone who was having a much harder time than me while running. And of course it's Haruki Murakami. It was really fun to hear his voice, because I've only read his fiction before. So hearing something with non-fiction with his own voice, that was really fun to hear. He's just got a great way of talking about things. You would hope so. But yeah, he combines talking about running with writing, kind of compares the two, like marathon running is a bit like writing a novel. It was just a really charming voice, kind of informative, got some writing advice in there. Just great to listen to in half-an-hour increments across my time of running. I'm kind of sad it's over now because I'm gonna have to just find other books to listen to while I'm running now. I think I need more Haruki Murakami, to be honest. I think I need to read some more this year. Maybe that'll be my running thing. Haruki while running. My last book that I read this month, I finished it today. It was a Christmas present, and it's The Once and Future Witches by Alix E. Harrow. I've never read Alix E. Harrow before. I haven't read that much like new fantasy. I said in my previous video, I always kind of go for tried and tested. So most of my fantasy is at least a couple of decades old. So it was really nice to read something like this. Also, I don't know why this gave me so much satisfaction, but this was my bookmark the whole way. I'll just show you it. This was my bookmark. It's just from a sewing thing. I bought some Tudor style. I bought some Tudor style sewing thread, and this came with it, and I just quite like this sort of Puritan looking woman looking very disapproving while reading a book about witches. So the Once and Future Witches is about three sisters. They're trying to sort of bring witching back into the world, intentionally or unintentionally, and it's mixing kind of modern witchcraft in with fairy tale, and I really enjoyed that. It is fantastically feminist because it's set like in the sort of early days of the suffragist movement. So, oh, and it's kind of just an already like feminist world. So like there's the Sisters Grimm in the history of their place as well. And like characters from history are kind of made into women. The villain in this and these sort of darker forces, oh my god, they are scary. Ooh, when it gives you the first sort of glimmer of a hint of what these darker forces are, I'm like, oh no, oh no. Like, it's not a scary book in like horror way. I can't deal with like stuff that properly tries to make you scared, but this gave me the right amount of tingles. It's really cinematic, so it almost feels meta sometimes, or even like you're being pitched for a film or a book at times, because it will say, oh, June is really wild and, you know, ooh, crazy, you know, but today she is tame. And this kind of, you know, playing with themes like that. Even later on, it kind of almost tells the story of them in miniature, which I really enjoyed. It just gives you a little bit of everything, a little bit of queerness, gives you really big cinematic scenes. Each chapter starts with a little spell. Yeah, it just does so much so well. Definitely a good Christmas present, and I think I might have to go and read more Alix Harrow because I really enjoyed this. Yeah, I want to see what else Alix Harrow can come out with. So thank you for watching my first ever wrap up. Let me know if you enjoyed watching that. If you want to know more about any of the books, if you think you might pick them up, please let me know that. I have links down below of the books and where you can buy them. So yeah, I will see you next week. Oh god, cat. Oh god. Okay, thank you. Just my cat. Closing jaw. What are you gonna do? Okay. I'll stop worrying. Move my tea out of the way. Like a caterpillar. Hello, caterpillar. You're beautiful.